Okay, so real quick, I also wanted to give you guys kind of another follow-up to the last video when I was talking about the funeral that I attended. Some new developments have happened there and some things that need prayer for, and it's kind of an interesting cultural thing. So as you might remember, there was a lady in our church plant whose mother passed away suddenly, and because her father was Buddhist and his remains were interred in a Buddhist temple, the temple expected her mother to also be interred in the same tomb. However, her mother was a Christian, and so she insisted on a Christian funeral and a Christian burial. And at first it seemed like they were going to be okay with that, but now as she's continuing to go down that path, she's finding more difficulties where the temple is demanding more things. And so some of the things that are happening now, they've asked her to purchase a Buddhist name to go on the tombstone, even though her mother's not going to be interred there. And that's a very expensive thing. It's a common thing. After you die, if you have a Buddhist funeral and your remains are interred in a Buddhist temple, you're supposed to purchase a Buddhist name from the temple, and you can spend more money to get a more prestigious name. And because her father had an expensive name, they are now asking her to purchase an equally expensive name for her mother, even though her mother is not a Buddhist and even though her mother is not going to be placed there. And so this is obviously difficult for her because she can't afford to do that. And at the same time, she feels like she shouldn't do that because she's a Christian and she's not Buddhist, and she doesn't believe that she should purchase a Buddhist name for her mother. The alternative that was explained to her then was, well, if you're not going to do that, if you refuse to purchase the name, then the temple will make you pay upwards of like $30,000 to have your family tomb removed from the temple grounds. And there's like 8 generations of her family are there in that tomb. And they're going to ask her to pay $30,000 to remove it, and then she'll have to find another place to put the tomb, which could be like another $40,000, which obviously she can't afford to do that either. So it's a really complicated situation. I think it's hard for us as Americans to fathom something like that. But so she's really struggling to figure out what to do. So please be praying for her. And that kind of shows you again just the strength of influence that the Buddhist temples have here in Miyako. So be praying that stronghold will also be weakened, that people will not fear the temples to the point where they're afraid to become Christians or to do things differently than they have in the past. It's kind of sad. But on a more positive note, one of the interesting things that happened at the funeral that I forgot to mention last time, there was one of her cousins got up to share the eulogy, and after the funeral was over, he came and spoke to our pastor who did the funeral service. And it turned out, he lived in a prefecture, probably 5 or 6 hours away, and he doesn't see his cousin very often or talk to her. His cousin is the lady in our church plant. But it turns out that he had become a Christian 5 years ago. And so this lady in our church plant thought she was the only Christian in her family. She didn't know any of her other relatives were Christians. And then to find out she had a cousin now who is now involved in a Christian church down in the neighboring prefecture. And, to have that connection was just such an encouragement and a joy to her to learn that. So we were kind of praising God for that. But again, please continue to be praying for her, be praying for the town, and just for wisdom and how to handle these kinds of situations when they come up. Because, these are the kinds of things that, I don't know, we didn't really anticipate when we were coming here. But this is, again, it's a very old town. People are very traditional in their thinking, and a big part of that tradition is rooted in the Japanese indigenous religious beliefs. And for Christians who no longer embrace those religious beliefs, it can be a very difficult thing. There's a lot of, kind of soft persecution in a sense. It's not like a very violent vocal, but it's a very powerful pressure and influence nonetheless. So be praying for our church plant, be praying for the people here, and just be praying for wisdom and how we address those issues when they come up. So thank you guys again for your prayers, and we'll continue to try and keep you updated on everything that's going on over here. We'll talk to you later. Bye.